Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And welcome to the fourth episode of my new podcast series, It's Time to Talk About. Today, the big ticket item, the man on everyone's lips. He's the one with the power. He's the one making the decisions, and we're not sure whether he's making the right decisions. But today, it's time to talk about Liam Rosenior. And I am delighted, ecstatic, absolutely buzzing to be able to welcome back Jan from Football Therapy to the channel. Jan, how's it going, man?
What's going on, Matt? Yeah, delighted to be back, man, and seeing the development of your channel. We were just having a good old chat before we started recording, so looking forward to getting into the Rosenior situation. Of course, lots going on with Chelsea, discontent, understandably, with everything that's going on at the moment. But like you say, Rosenior is the one we've picked out to dissect, so lots to get into, man, like you've been saying. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, mate. Yeah. It certainly is a situation. It's a myriad of situations, and there's so much to pick apart.
Yes. Top to bottom, situations all over the gaff, sadly.
Yeah, this is the one we'll go for today. So the gaffer, Liam Rosenior. So it's been so weird, man, because obviously it was kind of positive when he came in, because one thing Maresca wasn't doing was beating the teams he was supposed to beat, but, you know, he was beating the big teams, and Liam Rosenior came in and we were beating the teams we were supposed to beat, and he went on a 8-game winning run or something, and it was like, yeah, okay, cool, it's not a bad start. Yeah. And then basically it started with the first leg of the PSG game, since things have really started to turn around. Just absolutely abject performances, man. Absolutely abject performances, and a real concern about whether he's lost the dressing room. And there is just a lot to get into it. So, but just before I hand you over, I'm just going to read out the basic stats of where we're at with Liam Rosenior at the moment, right?
Yep,
19 matches,
okay,
10 wins, 2 draws, 7 losses in 19 games. So, points per game, 1.68. I mean, that's savage, man. Graham Potter only had 31 games in charge, do you know what I mean? And he's better than that at the moment. It's a 52% win ratio, whereas Graham Potter's was 38. But before we get into some more direct questions, just talk to me a little bit how you feeling about Mr. Rosenior.
Oh, there's so much context to, because before we, speak about this objectively, there's so much to consider as well. I mean, the draws are Burnley and Leeds from winning positions at home. So they are damning draws, and so it starts. I don't know. I won't swear on your channel just for the good of YouTube, but it started good, went bad. Let's say that way. It's because whenever I guest on podcasts, I always lift the lid and I go at Jan after dark. But for the sake of your YouTube algorithm, I'll keep it clean. Yeah, man. I think contextually as well, you need to talk about Maresca as well. I think very briefly. Yeah, because I don't think the plan wasn't to sack Maresca, and of course we've seen loads of briefings which sort of rallied people against this. We're not getting into a sporting hierarchy or ownership, but I think everyone sort of agrees they're not popular, right? But regardless, they weren't planning on sacking Maresca mid-season, right? No. That was not something that was in the plan. Maresca. And we'll get into this with Rosenior. In my opinion, Maresca, although I think he was an excellent tactician in high-profile games, I think he was he was obviously delighted to be managing Chelsea, but I don't think he ever had an emotional bond with the matchgoers, as far as I understand, with people that go to the bridge a lot. I think they sung his name twice in 18 months, and we'll get into Rosenior and his, how he is with the fans. They've already sung Liam, way more times than they sung Maresca's name. Yeah. I think we had 1 win in 8 under Maresca before. Yeah. What's being described as him setting fire to his Chelsea career. And of course, you can have your own opinion about that. Everyone will. We were all shocked he left, but it did seem like an untenable marriage that couldn't continue. Yeah. Unlike, for example, Pochettino, when Pochettino left Chelsea, they decided, him and the hierarchy, over a 2-day period, that they wouldn't continue together. Yeah. They all shook hands, they went out for dinner, they said, let's sleep on it, this decision. They met up the following day and they went, yeah, let's leave it here. And it's the most amicable split ever. Yeah. This is seemingly the opposite of that with Maresca, so he had to go, I guess. And then from the perspective of the ownership, who, by the way, I feel like I need to put my position out early on this. I do think, or the sporting hierarchy, let's say, I do think there is a real great deal of incompetence, or at
Mm.
least arrogance,
Yeah.
that they thought they could operate in such a way, and now they're having to sort of see the result of what they've done. Basically, I think there's a big element of that. For all the good few innovative signings they've done, they've screwed up a lot in terms of putting themselves in this position, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I understood the appointment of Liam Rosenior, yeah, because he plays a similar way. They know him inside out. He's not going to like screw them over. The communication will be there. The collaborative nature will be there. He understands the players. He understands everyone that works at Chelsea. It was supposed to be seamless, and it looks that early doors, right?
Yeah.
And I must say, I knew a little bit about Liam Rosenior because I listened to the Athletic podcast when he was talking to Io when he was managing Strasbourg, and I knew him a little bit. Liam, the sort of semi-meh footballing career, but I knew he spoke very well. He did an excellent article back in 2020 for The Guardian. He's a very interesting, thoughtful guy, and I was really backing him. And he did that first Chelsea presser. And I was really, really backing him. And I know Maresca is a really intelligent guy. He speaks 4 or 5 languages. He's a real excellent tactician. English isn't his first language. But the way Liam spoke, he was very tactical, emotionally intelligent, but he said just the right of everything. And he's not like Graham Potter. No. Graham Potter is a sort of shrug your shoulders, like, we'll have a good go and see what the boys can do. That was like Graham Potter. Man. Yeah. But look, Rosenior's cringe as well. We can get into that.
Yeah,
different kind of cringe. different kind of cringe. But the thing is with Potter, he was just sort of like, let's have a go and see what happens, sort of thing. Where Rosenior is like, nah, we're going to do this. This is Chelsea, nothing. A little bit. He tried to do a bit of Tuchel. He tried to do a bit of Mourinho, and maybe it's all tactical and therefore not inauthentic, but a little bit forced. We can get into. But he started well, and like you say, he started well. He got the wins. João Pedro is probably his greatest legacy so far.
For sure.
Cole Palmer, who's one of these players who didn't do the goodbyes to Maresca. We know the 2 players that loved Maresca were Cucurella and Enzo Fernandez, in terms of publicly speaking, but there wasn't a big emotional outcry from the players when Maresca left.
No.
And Cole Palmer didn't say anything, and then Cole Palmer was very quick to say life under Liam is amazing. Yeah. He lets us express ourselves, and suddenly, for the first few games, party vibes were back. Until it all turned, man. And before I throw it back to you, you started this sort of discussion about where we are, the results, the points, and everything. Obviously, that's skewed massively by just an absolute freefall of form, and like you say, players looking bereft and all this sort of stuff. But he doesn't help himself because the whole man aging thing. We need to talk about the cringe, I think, right?
Yeah,
if you're happy to, because the whole man aging thing, it is obviously dumb and it's cringe, yeah. But I've seen the clip. It's just it is such a throwaway moment. Do you know what I mean? Of him saying it. And the most cringe manager, for example, in the Premier League is probably a Spanish manager, Mikel Arteta. The heart and the brain, the light bulb, the hiring pickpockets to pickpocket. He does the most David Brent things ever. It's just the fact how he's has got a Spanish accent is it sort of negates it. But I was like the manager thinking that whatever, I sort of waved that away. But he knows he's cringe, the whole LinkedIn Liam. That's why when he caught himself talking about culture and he's like, that word culture, he says I don't want to be talking about culture, and he is high performance, he is Diary of a CEO. Yeah. But when he said respect the ball, okay, that for me, that's the one. That's when it's my players want to respect the ball. That I was like, come on, bro, it's the biggest own goal I've ever you don't need he does speak really well. I like how he's got some gonads on him. I really like the guy. Yeah. Genuinely, I see how I was just really wanting him to do well, but I mean, my position has changed him a little bit. I was really rooting for him, but just looking at how these players are, and how they started, it's how they started well, and where they are. I don't care how they say life under Liam's amazing. The João Pedro unlocking or whatever. I'm a bit worried, man.
I think basically that was a beautiful impassioned rant, man. I loved it. Thank you very much.
I needed to get. I mean, I do it on my chat. It's just nice to do it on other channels. You know, you feel like it's more of like a safe space where I'm not like a big target of just random angry people.
No, man, this is your football therapy session with the Stamford Shrink, right?
There we go. Yeah, very good. How long have you had that one in the chamber?
Mate, a couple of days. I literally thought I was like, oh, I'm using that.
By the way, if you don't swear in the first few minutes, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, okay. Mate, I'll go for it, man. Go for it. I normally mark it as, but
I could have said it. Yeah, you could bleep it.
Yeah, but, you know what? I'll do that.
Yeah. It'll be fun. It will be funny. There you go. 10 minutes. Yeah, 10 minutes, Matt. Anyway, yeah, go on.
So yeah, like there's so much to unpack about everything you just said, man, and we'll hone in on the cringe thing a little bit, because at the start it's like what I was getting and what I was hoping for was something that we didn't really see much from Enzo Maresca. Is he's taking the pressure off of the players and putting it onto himself, and that's like a Mourinho classic, right? And I love that. You know, for instance, the first game with Robert Sanchez when we played against Arsenal, and he tried to get him to play out from the back, and you know, Sanchez for a wobbly, and at the end he was just like, that performance reflects on me because I'm asking him to do this, that and the other, and I'm just like, look, I appreciate that because you're coming out and you're, you know, and like you said, you know, the generational press run at the start with, you know, he basically almost like paraphrased Mourinho in the special one, didn't he?
Yeah, I'm not arrogant, but I'm good at what I do.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? And there was these kind of vibes at the start, but obviously, you know, English guy, really, really well spoken. And like you say, I just felt like an instant connection to him. And the thing is, it's like, I really appreciate that, but at some point, I'm not generally one for throwing players under the bus, but at the same time, it's like, there's only so much you can do, and that's where it got to the protecting the ball thing. I'm like, he said that it was the players that decided that, right? So did he decide that's what he was going to say in that moment? Is that something that the players have told him? I don't know, man, but there are a million things you can say about that moment that aren't that.
It doesn't matter, Matt. It doesn't. Okay, so firstly, I think there's an inference that Willie Issa might be involved, which I don't care. He might be, and like, you know, I do think he's probably a big positive contributing factor. They seem to like him. The club seems to keep him a little bit secret, but apparently he's been good for the young players.
Yeah.
So even if like Willie Issa was like, you know, doing the hacker around the ball, it's like, we're going to respect the ball, and for some reason that slipped out of, you know, and this is like the biggest, this is like really sort of like being gentle and Rosenior here, like maybe that was something that said that he accidentally regurgitated. I do not care, bro. You have a responsibility as an intelligent, cerebral man to not effing say my players want to respect the ball, because that is headlines for years and years, and now like
tragic.
Like, you know, there's a piece in The Athletic. They talked about, you know, him looking at the big screen, and then everyone thought he was seeing himself, and then ran up and pretended like he was coaching and stuff. And like, you know, the footage inside stadiums isn't the director's feed that goes out into broadcast. So he's not looking at himself on the screen and then goes, oh, I better do that. But of course, that's what the narrative is, and that's what took flight, because he's put himself in that position now, you know, and he's really fed that narrative. And look, he might. It seems like he'll finish out the season regardless. He might win the FA Cup and get top 5, and we go, okay, good. Do you know what I mean? That won't mean there's no unrest within the fan base. No. Understandably so, that, you know, rightly so. They should critique what's been built and how we've been put in certain positions. But and wins heal most things. But he'll always sort of have that now. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's kind of like And that might be fine, but he just hasn't done himself so much favors, because some of it's been, you know, I loved listening to him speak. I loved listening to Tuchel speak in press conferences, and as an England fan, you know, I'll watch like his first one and a bit more, and I loved listening to how like sort of cerebral and like gregarious and charismatic, and I don't quite like that with Liam. But once you've heard him saying this, like, respect the ball, you get a little bit less like, I just don't want to hear that. Losing games also doesn't help.
No, we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah. You're losing games and respecting the ball, you don't want to listen to him chat anymore.
The problem is it calls into question a lot of what he's already said that came across well. Do you know what I mean? It's like, if you're the type of guy that can say protect the ball, how much can we buy
respect
into?
the ball, man.
Yeah.
Respect the ball's worse than protect the ball.
Yeah, respect the ball. Sorry, yeah, respect the ball.
Because protect the ball is still like that could just be like a slip, like a in terms of like a foot play. But to respect the ball, it's like you're making the ball sentient. Do you know what I mean? That's the problem.
Yeah, it's a bit hoodoo.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I think we can both quite charismatically agree that Liam Rosenior unfortunately has a case of cringeitis, which needs to be sorted out very, very soon. And I'll be interested to see in this 2-week break, when he takes stock of everything, including the tactics and how the team's actually playing, if anything changes about the way that he delivers himself. I think.
Well, sorry, mate. Sorry to interrupt you, but the great thing about Liam is he'll joke about that. Yeah. He'll deliberately stick it and there'll be like a goal scored and like someone would have missed a sitter, but his other player will get it in the back post, and the first one who missed it will be like, oh, he's just respecting the ball. He'll throw in a joke and they'll all laugh. Do you know what I mean? Because he's smart like that.
He did that about the Lego and the clapping at the start as well, didn't he? He kind of threw it back and stuff. So yeah, I mean, but I do think that this has to be a period of reflection for him, not only on the team, how the team's set up and how we get through the rest of the season, but also like how he comes across in the press. Because the thing is as well, it's like we don't know whether it was the players that said that, and like you said, maybe it was something that he'd heard, but the respect in the dressing room is huge, isn't it? And that's obviously looks like it's been a bit of a problem with the particularly abject performances we've had recently. So let's just kind of move on to that, man. Like, one of the questions: do you think it looks like Liam Rosenior has lost the dressing room already based on the last few performances, especially the Everton game?
It's tough, isn't it? Because there's losing. I think you can lose the dressing room in different ways. You can lose them in the players don't like you anymore. Yeah. And they're like, oh, this guy's just nasty, or like he's just, whatever. And I don't think he's done that. No. I think they did like how he came in and talked to them. How he miscontrolled that ball, and Estevao says, I can't believe you're a pro footballer. That's him joking. That's another way he dealt with that positively in the media. When, he brought up and was like, yeah, he couldn't believe I played football for a living. When that was a cringe moment, and he owned it completely, and I did the right thing. So obviously Cole said life under Liam is amazing. Joao Pedro has been a huge benefactor of his appointment. That's like, if he were today, it would be his biggest legacy, was showing us that there is this player here. If we can continue his form like that, that's a positive thing. I mean, we're yet to see Estevao play under him. I think they like him. I think they genuinely really like him. But I think in terms of losing the dressing room, I wonder if this run of form is almost like a loss of just belief in the club, almost like the fans have. Do you know what I mean? And they obviously we had the quotes from Enzo Fernandez. We had this identity under. He loved Maresca. Like I said, Maresca and Cucurella were the two massive Maresca sympathizers. Those two, obviously, they were Spanish speaking. And he did have a plan for like big games where perhaps there's a bit more of an idealism to Rosenior, but I do have great sympathy for Rosenior, bro. Yeah. Because he has been thrown into a near impossible situation, started well, and even with the draws against Burnley and against Leeds, they were damning that we can't let that slide. Awful. The first leg away in Paris, until Jorgensen chucked one in, I thought we were going to win, dude. Yeah. Genuinely. It was 2-2. We're in the ascendancy. Ousmane Dembele's been taken off to protect him. And I'm like, well, the Ballon d'Or holder's coming off. We've got the slightly in favoured stats here. Their best players just come off, and I feel we're good here. And obviously Jorgensen at that moment, and then we just then the whole team just collapsed and killed the tie in that moment. And then of course, because the tie was killed in that moment, and we don't have a mentally resilient, experienced team, we all knew that. We've known that for 3 years. Yeah. Then it's not really surprising that there was Kvaratskhelia just slapped us in the first minutes and they will collapse. It doesn't. And then obviously the Newcastle in between. To be fair, before we get to Everton, Newcastle did play really well out of nowhere. They did play really well. And Everton, everyone's saying, Everton's played their best game all season at home in the Hill Dickinson Stadium against Chelsea. They played the perfect game against them, which is fine. But it's also, we are supposed to be Chelsea. Yeah. And it's so damning, the reaction. And I do have sympathy. So you earlier said about how he protects the players. He did say lately, I'll always want to protect my players. It was a caveat, but the individual mistakes and how we react to setbacks isn't like a tactical thing. It isn't about the pressing. It isn't about the counter pressing. It isn't about. He almost wants to be like, it's not about my effing tactics. Look how these kids are responding to a setback. Look how Jorgensen's chucking one in. Look how Fofana's not tracking the play, or Trev goes up, and there was I can't remember which game it was. I think it was the Newcastle game for the Newcastle goal. Tactically, it was a problem in terms of there was the free player in Reece and Trev, and where no one knew where to go because there was like a man-to-man, and there was a weird moment when there was like a sort of like does not compute, and there's just a free runner down the middle, and it was just a shocking
Error
embarrassment.
404.
Yeah, exactly. And that was tactical. But there were moments where he's just like, at the end of the day, like these kids are chucking them in, and then they're all losing their minds when there's setbacks. And he said the first thing he said when he arrived is how this team like responds to setbacks, and it hasn't got any better, it's got worse. But then again, of course, that's on him as well. And if he is this emotionally empathetic, dude, then this is what you should be good at, and it's got worse, Matt, basically.
Yeah.
So it's got way worse, and it looks like they were collapsing, and for the first time in a long time, I don't know exactly, but yeah, maybe, because I always think the international break often comes at the bad time for us, but it came at a good time for us. Palmer looked good off the bench for Tuchel. Enzo scored. Caicedo had a good performance. Like it was like a nice moment for just go and forget about what's happening at Chelsea, because I don't know, man. Like the way that 3-0, the mood got so low. Like it's the first time we've lost 4 in a row since like the early 90s. It was my last season. I had a similar moment when we lost 3 games to Brighton, I think, in short succession. And it was like the nadir of the Maresca era for me, and I hated it. And obviously, it all ended up okay because we sort of just got into Champions League on like the last match week.
I remember watching that video of yours actually. That was before I started, and it was the Brighton loss in the when we got launched out of the cup, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I remember you were just like, "This is it."
Yeah,
I
was miserable. I was miserable, man. I was miserable.
Yeah.
And of course, it worked out. But like, we got in the Champions League, but only just. It was literally the last day, and Villa lost, and there was like it all went our way. Just we sort of fell in, but we got the Conference League. We won the Club World Cup, but it wasn't a fair reflection of where this team truly is.
No.
And that's when we're seeing the fruits of the sort of like screwed up labour of the sporting hierarchy, and therefore Clear Lake. I do say more Clear Lake than Blueco, because I don't think it's necessarily Todd Bowley's prerogative too much, but certainly seeming is Badad Iqbali and the sporting directors.
Yeah.
And I think they just got this big false positive of what they'd created from the Club World Cup. And therefore, we'd go bring it back to Rosenior and what we're speaking about here. I do have a great deal of sympathy for him, because he's got this really tough situation. He said, "Do you want to come and manage Chelsea?" Heck yeah. Do you want to like manage, Palmer and Estevao and Caicedo and some other good players we have, and obviously some not so good players.
Yeah.
But of course he's going to take it. He's going to feel comfortable because he's back in London, back at home. He doesn't. I don't think he ever learned French. And he's near his family, which he loves the opportunity. He doesn't need to impress the bosses too much, because he's been impressing the bosses already.
Yeah.
He got in the door. The players seemed to like him. It was all rosy, but I'm starting to think like, I mean, there's so much to talk about, Matt. But like, I'm sure you've covered it on your content. But the whole Danny Finkelstein, meeting where he says a couple of things. It's obvious we're building the best team in the world, which is completely not true. We've got some amazing young talents, but I mean, look at what's happening, bro. So like, we've got some amazing young talents who would be churlish to suggest otherwise. And also this like sweeping it's very Moneyball statement about how coaches don't affect teams.
Ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And like I think, as much as I love Liam as a character and want him to succeed, my first thing I said when he was appointed was, maybe he was always going to be a Chelsea manager at some point. But like, this is not Frank Lampard and Chelsea's greatest ever player and coming in a transfer ban.
No.
This is very different to that. And I understand why people are making the Potter comparisons, because it's like company man stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's unfair to Rosenior to compare him to Potter in terms of persona.
I agree, 100%.
But I do wonder, I would think like the slide, to arrest that slide, the worst losing run in like 3 decades away of a it is. It's just like, can he stop this? Because it's happening on his watch. So how do you feel about him? Like,
so I'm conscious we're strapped for time, but I will do my best to narrow it down. So Liam Rosenior, I think 100% with you. I liked him at the beginning. I really wanted him to do well, and I really wanted him to, it's just difficult when you look at the last 4 games. Like, there's 2 things about the last 4 games. A, it's the worst run we've been on in a long time, but also it's like the nature of the performances. It's not even just losses. We're talking about some seriously awful losses. And I haven't seen a loss like the Everton one since Graham Potter. So I'm not comparing Rosenior to Graham Potter in that respect, but that abject level of that performance was really damning. I think it was really damning. So the thing is, I'm not throwing my hat off about it. Like, he's not going anywhere for the time being. Maresca wouldn't have gone anywhere had he have not opted to leave at the end of the day. They've given Liam Rosenior a 6.5-year deal. They gave Maresca a 5.5-year deal. So they back Liam Rosenior a year more than Maresca at the time of appointment.
But I don't think, just sorry to interject, I do think the way these guys operate as well, I do think those lengthy managerial contracts to these particular level of managers that they're appointing, I think they're heavily favoured in the club's side. For example, like, it's not like you're not getting Guardiola 4 years ago making demands and everything. I reckon they say, if we sack you, we will pay you for X amount of time, but of course usually as soon as they get another job they stop paying them, and then you employers pay them. And I reckon, like, there's mitigating circumstances, like, if you're been performing X amount of time here, we can sack you with very low severance, yada yada yada. I reckon there probably would have been something like that with Maresca as well. So I just wanted to say that I don't think, like, they're going to have to pay a 6.5-year contract, like, certain things do. I don't think they've done that.
No, that's fair. I think even just in the show, though, even just in the PRness of it, do you know what I mean? It's like Graham Potter got a 7.5-year deal. If you're just looking at they're not hiring, they're hiring these guys wanting them to last these long.
100%, because in Pochettino got a 1+1.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly. And that's so important. I think when people talk about, like, Poch getting sacked, I'm like, Poch didn't get sacked. Like, they made an agreement, like, literally, like you talked about before. And the fact that it was a 2-year deal was always indicative that was how it was going to be. So Poch was never the guy, as much as, he had an okay season and, brought us back from the abject Potter era. But yeah, as far as Rosenior goes, man, like, I don't think he's going anywhere unless we get to Graham Potter genuine levels. If we find ourselves 10th to 12th in the Premier League by January next season or something, like, I think he's gone.
Interesting. So, yeah, because I sort of agree with you, but I do think, like, we don't lose, like, I don't know if we lose to Port Vale, but, like, like, so I'm trying to think of, like, if we still are in the FA Cup, say we beat Port Vale and we're in the semi-final, so we're, like, a couple of wins away from an FA Cup and Europa League qualification, which is better than the Conference League were last year, and a trophy. The FA Cup, we haven't won it in the best part of a decade. If we're still in that, but we are sliding down the league and he's lost the players, I think he goes this season. Genuinely.
Do you think
so? I genuinely think so. I think because there's enough games left. How many Prem games are there left? 7?
7 or 8, yeah.
Yeah.
7, I think.
7, all right. So if we get embarrassed by Man City, the protest at the following game, which is on the 18th at home against Man United, is pretty, like, well reported on and big enough. And then when we get slapped by Man United, even if we, like, just sneak past Port Vale, I genuinely think he might go. Then 2 games, just if we the Port Vale is neither here nor there. And I mean that if we, like, slap him, if we squeak by, or even if there's, like, a historical loss. Obviously, if there's a historical loss, I don't think he'll get sacked for that, but obviously that will apply pressure on the following Manchester games. Yeah. But I genuinely think, dude, if we get slapped by both the Manchester teams, the protest is palpable. I genuinely think they can. And also, like we've been discussing, when you asked me about the players losing the dressing room, we're talking about the body language on the pitch. Fernandes doing this, doing the interviews afterwards. If that continues for those following 2 high-profile games, I don't think he's bulletproof for the rest of the season.
Yeah, okay.
I think also there's a scenario where he stays, obviously, and he starts next season, like
Yeah.
you're saying. I think there's a scenario where I'm saying it's untenable in a very short amount of time because they're like, oh my god, this is falling apart, and we can still get something. We can still get European qualification and a trophy. You know, like they're just not responding to him. We need to just do something here. And like, even if that is literally just give it to Callum McFarlane and say just do what you did before. You know, do what you did before. Just get Liam's gone. Do what you did before. You know, Willis is going to do the team talks. Just I think they might literally do that. And also, I think there's a world where, you know, we get to an FA Cup final and lose it. We finish sixth. We finish sixth, and maybe someone else better comes along and they still change him. You know, in maybe not 100% planning to. So I think everything's on the table here. Yeah, and I know we're gonna finish, but I'd still love for him to succeed as a person.
Yeah, of course.
I'm just not sure he can right now. How things are, basically.
Okay, I've got 2 quick things before we wrap up. I could talk to you about this for hours. Do you know what I mean? It'd be so easy.
Yeah. It's just crazy stuff.
So my thing about it is it's the hubris that's been displayed from the sporting directors, the ownership, and like the likes of Danny Finkelstein already, being convinced that they are putting together this elite project, even if everyone else can't see it. Right? That's the thing that says even if we. And top 6th could be a Champions League spot, by the way, if Aston Villa win the Europa League as well. So that we might be the most undeserved recipients of a Champions League place ever
in history.
In history. But for me, like it's the absolute hubris of the Danny Finkelstein stuff. Like, the manager performance, no, this and that and the other. Can't you see we're building an elite project? And then you look at how involved Eghbali and the sporting directors are in everything that goes on. And I just think that they will look past what's going on right now and see, right, we've got this guy, we've brought him over from Strasbourg. He's a company man. We know he's going to listen to whatever we say. We're going to push him and back him through this period. We're going to buy him a load of players in the summer, and then we'll see what happens. That's
and belief in his ability as well. Because they do want to win, and they do still want to win at some point.
So that's how I feel. I 100%. It's two sides of the coin, isn't it? Like a lot of fans are of the opinion that Liam Rosenior is on very thin ice. I just think from, like I said, the abject and serious amount of hubris we've seen from the ownership and the sporting directors so far, I think they will put their vision above current events and data that's actually happening right now. And just to wrap it up, if Liam Rosenior gets the boot, who do you want to see?
Okay, so I mean, say it's Can now. Like I said, they won't get a permanent appointment. They'll probably put Callum in again or whatever. It's fascinating. I mean, if you're asking me, can I choose who I want?
Yeah.
Is that the question? Is it like Xabi Alonso?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Because I did a video on my second channel today. I spoke about Cesc.
Yeah.
But Cesc is doing like amazing stuff with Como, and he will take that team into the Champions League, and he's not gonna. I think he's also a part owner of the club. Like he's not gonna. So he's not gonna walk away. Now, I'm not saying for a second Xabi Alonso would manage Chelsea. Whenever he left Bayer Leverkusen, I thought he was going to, do 1, 2, maybe all 3 of his previous clubs. He went to 1 in Real Madrid, so that leaves Bayern Munich and Liverpool. They're not going to sack company at Bayern. He's absolutely tearing things to pieces. Which, by the way, he got Burnley relegated. So that's one for these sport. Well, this is what these sporting directors are looking at. They're saying they plucked Arteta. I mean, no one really likes watching Arsenal. They're boring as hell and all this kind of stuff. But he's doing what the sporting directors want, which is qualifications, the points per game. He's smashing it. They plucked him off from nowhere, from Guardiola's assistant. Chelsea will even say, "Oh, they've got Maresca out of the Championship. He did well for us." So there's a lot of that with company at Bayern. This is why they're all saying like, "Oh, don't judge your Roseniors because the big managers are done now." Do you know what I mean? But if I could choose, I would choose Xabi Alonso.
Okay.
I don't think he'll come to Chelsea. I think he would go to Liverpool probably to replace Arne Slot. But I think he'd be perfect because he obviously won the invincible double with Leverkusen. With a very young quite a young Leverkusen side, and obviously took them to the European final. They lost 3-0, but he was that close to an invincible treble, which is insane. It's insane. But the thing is with Alonso as well is the Galactico mindset of Real Madrid ate him up, and and the Perez politics and stuff, and we don't have that at Chelsea. We never did. We were never like this. We were always like sort of fighters and a teamwork, and I think he'll be able to summon what he did at Leverkusen at Chelsea and like work with young players and be humble and be innovative and be a great tactician and be a player like
Yeah.
Fabregas would.
Yeah,
That these that he's like your kid, you know, Enzo Fernandez is going to listen to Xabi Alonso. Do you know what I mean? He's going to listen to a Fabregas. In the same way you talk about like Zidane at Real Madrid, they just, how good is a manager? Is Zidane's a Galactico whisperer. I don't think he's the best tactician in the world, but
Absolutely
the players listen and respect him.
For sure.
You listen to Zidane.
100%.
In the same way like these kids
Because
would
if not,
listen
he nuts you.
yeah, exactly, quite. But you know, but Alonso, he's still this like Galactico player.
Yeah.
But he also won an invincible double. Like you're like, okay,
Amazing.
I'm gonna listen to this guy.
Yeah,
So if I could
true.
pick anyone, I'd pick him for our team right now.
Makes sense.
But in reality, it's gonna be someone a lot worse.
It's an Iraola or a Glasner or something like that.
I mean,
isn't it?
Iraola. To be fair, like I don't think. I mean, Glasner. I know Glasner's won trophies with Palace, the FA Cup, and he won obviously the Europa League with Frankfurt, so he's got the trophies. But I think that Iraola would be more of a sexy signing.
Yeah.
But you know that what's really happening is the Chelsea fans are getting twitchy about like Gary O'Neill. You know, from the, do you know what I mean? Like, but that's the truth. That's what the fear is.
No, it's true. It's true. It's 100% true.
But you know, you ask me the question, I go Xabi Alonso.
Yeah, no, that's fair, man. My pick before we got Liam Rosenior was Cesc Fabregas. I've been following Como like with great. Cesc Fabregas is unashamedly my favourite ever Chelsea player, even though he's got the Arsenal.
Do you know Felix, who's a scout for Como now?
No.
He's like well, he's like a Chelsea Twitter account and stuff. I went to a game, the under-21 games with him and Alex Goldberg at the beginning of the season.
Nice.
When like we beat City 3-0. Shim scored a hat trick.
Awesome.
And I knew I was meeting Alex. I didn't know I was meeting him, but I was chatting to him a little bit. And he's got he's a scout for Como, so it's pretty wild. He's a young guy as well. It's pretty dope. But they're doing amazing stuff. And Cesc is. Did you see he did that shirt pull on there? Was it I guess a Juve player, because was it Allegri that was annoyed at him, or Gasperini or Roma? But I was covering it today, but a player ran past and Cesc pulled his shirt on the touchline. I was thinking like, it's funny, but like even like prime Mourinho eye poke wouldn't do that. It was disgraceful behaviour. Like player from the technical area is pulling opposition players on the break. I was thinking, you can't do that over here, mate.
No,
but
that's true.
Yeah, anyway, great future for Cesc. And,
for sure.
But he ain't leaving Como, so.
And guys, if you haven't already, go and check out the video that Jan mentioned on his second channel, Football Yannick. It's a great video, and I think, I'm
like 80 subs off 20k. So
mate, do it. 80 subs off 20k. Come on, guys, you can do it. You get over to Football Yannick and click that subscribe button. And of course, if you have watched me before, chances are you have watched Football Therapy. But if you haven't, what are you doing? Get over there, click subscribe. Jan's got 200k subs, and he's on the way to world domination. Jan, thanks so much for joining me today, man. I've absolutely loved it. It's a pleasure to have you. Nice one, guys. Thank you all very much for sticking around until the end of the video if you did, and we'll catch up with you very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.